Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another Mailbag, where I answer your hot takes, your observations, your questions, and ultimately your comments about tennis or anything else. I have waited for the first round of Roland Garros to end. It's not quite over. There's like a couple matches still going on, but I'm trying to get a head start on my afternoon. That includes preparation for commentary tomorrow and a New York Rangers playoff game. I pulled 12 questions from the YouTube community tab. Thank you, as always, for participating. And I'm excited to get into this mailbag as always. But before I do want to remind you about the draw. It is my newsletter that curates the best tennis content on the internet every week, all in one place, straight to your inbox every Tuesday morning. Tuesday is today. That means it dropped this morning. But don't worry if you missed it. If it didn't come to your inbox, you can just go to thedraw.tennis and you can read the web version, and then you can subscribe after you do that. What's in it this week? It is a piece from, well, actually, I'm not going to describe that one because it's complicated. There was a great feature about Rafa in the New Yorker that was written by Jerry Marzorati. It's a little bit premature. It kind of read like his career obituary, but it was really well done. John Wertheim interviewed Daria Kasatkina for CBS, and it is incredible. Dasha is incredible. Tumaini Carroll has a ton of really cool details on Andy Murray's racket switch to Jannik's for The Guardian. And lastly, I think the Tennis Channel interviews that Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz did were very revealing in regards to where they're at right now with their respective health and how they're feeling. There were some revelations in those interviews, so those are also in the draw. Again, the draw.tennis to subscribe. Link in the description. This episode is also brought to you by Tennis Channel Plus. Right now, the world is watching one of the biggest tournaments in tennis. As the clay settles, the stakes rise at Roland Garros. Join Tennis Channel Plus in the heart of the action with daily live coverage of the second week at the French Open. Every point has the potential to be a historic moment in tennis history, and you never know when you're going to witness a match that will be talked about for years to come. So stream it now with Tennis Channel Plus to be there when it all goes down. If anybody is wondering why I do that sponsorship so straight down the middle with no personalization whatsoever, the reason is that airs on other shows for the Believe Podcast Network. So I just needed to stick to the script. But yes, I am commentating on TC Plus this week, first 8 days of Roland Garros, so you can hear me there. And I'll also shout out some improvements that they've made to the platform. They've updated it. The frame rate is better. The picture quality is better. And the streams are closer in proximity to the live action, so there's not as much of a delay. Great updates recently to Tennis Channel Plus. One more thing, which I make zero money for, but worthy of a shout out. I was driving to LA and I needed a coffee. I was feeling a little bit sleepy. I didn't want too much caffeine because it was late. So I looked up coffee near me, and I always try to avoid the big chains and find somewhere local. I end up walking into a coffee shop, ordering a little cappuccino to go, and I get recognized by one of the people who work at the coffee shop. He's a viewer. He's a listener. He goes, "What's your name?" I go, "Gill." He goes, "Gill Gross." Okay, so he was very nice. He gave me a free bag of coffee, which he totally didn't need to do. Super, super nice of him. So I just want to give a shout out to Slow Bloom Coffee Cooperative in Riverside, California. But I will say, and I would leave it at that if I didn't truly believe this. If you are a third wave coffee drinker who truly cares about quality in your cup, this stuff is legit, and you can order it online. So it's a really good third wave coffee shop, and it's a co-op, which is very, very cool. And I'm actually drinking some right now. This is a washed Colombian, which is beautiful and vibrant. A little bit fruity. Very, very good. All right, now I'm ready to go. Here we go. Husky Plays asks, what do you think about Giovanni Mpetshi Perricard's run in Lyon? He defeated the likes of Sonego, Gaston, Bublik, and Echeverry. So I actually made this the first comment because I was slated or scheduled to call his match today against David Goffin, which I see that he lost. but I did not commentate on it because of the rain. It pushed everything back. So unfortunately, I don't get to talk about that. But I'll say what I can about him, having actually not seen his match today against Goffin, and having still not watched him play a full match, which you always really need to do to get a good read on a player. Ideally, I feel like you need to watch maybe 3 full matches in different conditions and against different style opponents, ideally, before you really understand a player. But I did watch a lot of highlights from Leon. And first, I just want to say the results speak for themselves. Mpetchi Perricard, and I wonder if he's going to go by Perricard or GMP, because probably once he becomes an established name on tour, I don't think that people are going to want to say the entire name every single time. But he has won 3 challengers this year, 4 challengers in the last 12 months. But even more impressive is how opportune he's been with the few tour level events that he's played. Right now, the number's at 5. So Leon was his... Well, let's go back even to the end of last year. He gets to play Antwerp, and I don't know if he came through qualifying or got a wild card, but he made his first career ATP quarterfinal in Antwerp, and that was his 3rd ever event. Leon was his 4th ever event, and he wins his first title. So first quarterfinal, first title, and that only took 4, and he's 20? That's absurd. Like, that takes people a long time, especially when they're that age, and usually you get beat up a few times, maybe for your first year, and then eventually you get to the point where you're making a quarterfinal and you're winning a title, which some people don't do for a long, long time. So really awesome stuff, especially because Leon was not one of the lower level 250s. Like, the draw strength was pretty solid here, especially for the week before a major. And of course, Mpetchi Perricard is from Leon, which is made it an even cooler story. And I don't think that makes it easy on him. There's pressures and distractions that come with playing at home. So it was really fun. It was really cool. The second thing I'll say is he kind of holds the mantle right now as the only young guy I see with the one-handed backhand. And I've talked about this year extensively, but I used to be in the camp that felt pretty strongly that the one-hander was always going to be a part of the game. And then the more I looked at the young players and like the people coming up, and even if you look at young high school and college players now, you just start to realize that you're not seeing any one-handers anymore. So even if it's possible to play with the one-hander 10, 20 years from now, if nobody actually does it, if coaches choose not to develop players through that, if young players don't see that on their TV and don't have any interest in even starting with it, then it's going to go away, even if it doesn't necessarily have to go away. So I really do think the trend of it becoming rarer and rarer and rarer is only going to go one direction. And eventually I think there's a good chance that it won't exist. And this is something that I've recently changed my mind about. So he is carrying the mantle. I'll also say that. Now, in terms of game, he is a huge guy. Like, the first thing I really noticed is I looked at how small the racket looked in his hands. And I'm thinking, like, I don't remember anyone who's made the tennis racket look so damn small since John Isner. Like, it looks like a toothpick. He's really tall, and he's not tall skinny. He's tall and built. So there's a lot of strength and mass that he brings to the table. Serves huge. And the statistics at the challenger level this year for him are absurd. He's holding at 93%. He is breaking at 13%. His ace rate is 20%, which is unbelievably good. That would lead the tour. That's higher than Hurkacz, 20%. So 93% holds, 20% ace. That's serve bot territory. And unfortunately for him, 13.2 break rate. That's also serve bot territory. But in Lyon, he actually broke a quarter of the time, 25%, which is actually tremendously good. Most of his challenger events have been on hard court. Lyon on the clay, it's going to shift the numbers a little bit. Ace rate was down to 11.6%. Hold percentage was down to 82%. So that really shows you that the slower conditions are, and most likely the stiffer competition is having an effect on how he's playing or what those numbers look like. But one of the things that also stands out to me, because I look at especially his numbers on the Challenger Tour, and I'm thinking, okay, he's holding every time. He's not breaking much. He's definitely played a lot of tie breaks. So given how much success he's had, it must be that he's been really clutch in the tie breaks, and that is true. 16-9 record in the tie breaks, 64% win percentage. That's why he's winning so much, and that's why he's 24-9 on the Challenger Tour this year for a 72.7% win rate. But he hits a big forehand. The backhand might be the weakness of the game. He does come forward. I think he needs to work on his footwork coming forward. A little bit clunky, a little bit sloppy at times, but he's such a big guy. These things take a long time, and I think he'll become a more fluid mover in time, and he'll definitely get better at net. Right now, he's a very willing net rusher, but he's not all that clinical up there. But I love it. Big serve, big forehand, moves well for his size. Does not move well, but moves well for his size. And I think there's a lot of potential there from what I've seen so far. It's exciting. Let's go to the next one. From member Lindsay Andrews, thank you for being a member. You can hit the join button if you would like to contribute to the channel, support the channel, $2 a month. With continued rumors of a Nick Kyrgios return this year, I'm curious what, if anything, you think tennis is missing without him. He's always been clear about his ability to bring fans in, but tennis seems to be booming, with attendance records seemingly being set at all major events. I personally don't miss his on-court antics, despite how impressive his game is and how much empathy I have for what he's been through. Any thoughts? Yeah, sure, plenty of thoughts on that. I mean, I wouldn't read too much into, I do think tennis is in a good place in terms of viewership. Participation is way up. I wouldn't read too much into the attendance records being broken at the slams, because what they're doing purposely is they're allotting for more tickets to be sold every year. And the demand is such that no matter how many tickets they make available, they're going to sell out, because these majors are just very popular events. I actually heard that the Australian Open got a little crowded this year, that the experience wasn't quite as good if you had a grounds pass because of the crowd. So these tournaments need to be careful with that, because you can overcrowd it and it can go the other way, which is a huge digression from what you're asking about, which is Kyrgios. Look, I think 2022 was so great. I thought he added so much to that season. And I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying in terms of how, like, sometimes it's been tiresome, it's been eye-rolly, and also sometimes when someone doesn't care and isn't trying very hard, it just sucks the life out of a tennis match to the point where it's not fun to watch at all. And believe me, I've been there watching Nick Kyrgios in the past where it's been like, well, this isn't entertaining. This sucks because you don't care. So I've been there. And also some of the comments about that kind of self-aggrandize himself and make it sound like he is super essential to the success of the sport of tennis is totally an eye roll. But 2022 was amazing. He was a contender. His tennis was super fun to watch. And he really proved everybody right in a way. He proved a lot of people wrong. And he would say he would focus on proving people wrong. I would argue he proved a lot of people right. Everybody who said, oh, Nick is so talented, Nick could be so much better, everybody who said that was proven correct in 2022. And that claim was met with pushback. It was, if he's so talented, why is he spending most of his career outside the top 20? Answer me that. And the response was, if he gets in shape, if he if he works really hard on his physical, so he stops getting injured all the time, and he's able to be durable in tournaments, especially majors, and he starts to get competitive in the matches, if he starts to compete hard in the matches, then he's going to be a top 10 level player. And when he did those two things, he became a top 10 level player. And the way I look at it, first of all, yes, he, as a personality, he's fresh and he's different and he's polarizing, and that stuff is kind of exciting. But also as a player, he's another contender, and that's always good. That is always good for the game. It's a and his tennis is quite beautiful. I always say this. He's an offensive genius, in my opinion. The way he attacks is quite special, and his serve, in my opinion, it's the best serve to watch. And I know big serving isn't always appreciated by all fans because some people like rallies, and I like rallies too. But as far as who has the most beautiful serve to watch on tour, I think it's him now that Federer's gone. So if we could get 2022 Nick Kyrgios back, and I'm not sure we ever will, given the lengthy period of time that this injury has been, suggesting that it's pretty severe, and knowing how, just looking at his career, like the simple fact that his level of motivation and his level of fitness that season was, in the whole scope of his career, an outlier. So am I going to assume that when he comes back, that outlier becomes the default, that it becomes the norm? No, I'm not going to do that. But it would be great. It would be great if he came back and he looked like 2022 Nick Kyrgios. From Redbeard, Atmane hit the ball in frustration after the point was over way, way harder than Djokovic did, and hit the woman in the crowd. Is hitting an official more punishable than hitting someone in the crowd, or does it just depend which referee is working that day? It should not depend on that, obviously. And if you hit a ball in frustration that hits, I think, anybody in the stadium, you should be DQ'd. Now, I've been a little bit hesitant where I was hesitant, at least, on Tales from the Booth, because nobody's actually seen it. Nobody actually saw what happened because there aren't a lot of cameras on that court and there was no replay. But it seems quite obvious from how everybody reacted that the ball that Atmane slapped with great force into the crowd hit that woman. And I think where they went wrong in handling this situation is it seemed very much like they were relying on the woman to determine the outcome of this incident, where it really shouldn't matter, and it especially shouldn't matter given the kind of pressure that a French crowd would sure to be putting on the woman to play it off as if everything was fine and nothing was wrong and that they should just keep playing the match as is. Obviously, that's a terrible situation to put that spectator in. And again, I feel a little bit speculative right now because I don't fully know that that's how it was being handled, but that's just kind of how it looked like it was being handled. But what really frustrates me about this, more than anything, is the lack of accountability when a decision like this is made. Like, where is Roland Garros with their explanation for why Atmane was not DQ'd? Because you had plenty of time to make that decision. This isn't like a lines judge missed the call, in which case we do not need an official statement. The lines judge erred because they didn't see the ball correctly in the line, right? Like, we don't need that. But this was a decision that there was plenty of time to basically gain an understanding of what happened and make a ruling thereafter. And for some reason, they gained an understanding of what happened and ruled a certain way. How is there no explanation, public explanation that describes why the decision was made, how it was made? That, to me, is my biggest frustration, because it allows for situations like this to continue to be officiated inconsistently because nobody has an idea of what the precedents are and what the standard is. And in my opinion, the standard should be, and the understanding that I have of what the standard is supposed to be, is that if you hit a ball in frustration after the point is over and it hits anybody in the stadium, save for maybe launching a ball super high up in the air into the upper deck of a very large stadium, in which realistically that's not going to hurt anybody, and it's just a ball abuse warning. And we've seen that time and time again just be called as a ball abuse warning. And I think rightly so, because, again, realistically, it's really not all that dangerous for anybody involved. But at the end of the day, when you're hitting line drives like that, there's no room for that. There's just no room for that in the sport. Oh, and Atmane needs to be better in general. I want to say that Terence Atmane, if anybody who's watched him was not very surprised by this, because he has no control over himself on the court, and that's very much clear. And he's really sweet off the court, really smart, great personality, talented player. The guy's got a million things going for him, but he needs to control himself, because anybody who's watched him play before was not at all surprised by what happened here. Next one from Christian. Why do you think Sinner and Alcaraz seem to have the mental side of the game figured out, while Rune still seems to struggle with it? Do you think it's just mental, or are Alcaraz and Sinner overall better players in most aspects of the game right now? It's pretty tough to answer. Like, Holger has some really good qualities mentally. He's highly ambitious, and I think he works very hard. He's quite confident in big moments. He backs himself. But there's something about his demeanor and his intensity level that is probably too far in the extreme for his own good. Like, you want to be intense. It's much better than being flat. And every player has a level of intensity that they're comfortable with. For some, it's going to be more toned down. For some, it's going to be more ramped up. And ideally, you have to find at what level do you compete at your best. But Holger is, as far as being wired and intense and jittery, it's all the way on the most extreme end of the spectrum. And I think it makes him tired, because he expends a ton of energy, I think, just with his constant emotional state. And it makes him jumpy and edgy in terms of his decision-making. I wonder if part of the impatience that you see in his game sometimes, and in his decisions for how he plays, has to do with almost the way he's wired mentally. So it's kind of complex in that way. I think there are areas where Alcaraz and Sinner have some pretty incredible gifts mentally, and Rune has time to kind of dial it in. But right now, I would say yes. I see a lot. I see things upstairs for both Sinner and Alcaraz mentally. Jannik probably being, because his shot selection has gotten so good and his nerve management issues have been really good recently, and his maturity levels are so high, and emotionally he's totally unflappable. It literally doesn't matter what's happening in the match. He just kind of goes to work no matter what. With all of the full picture of Sinner, like, I don't know what more you could have asked for. Now, he actually used to be probably too much on the flat side also. And Simone Vagnozzi and Darren Cahill, and this was a big 2022 emphasis, they were like, hey, can you, like, bring some energy to the court, use the crowd, fist pump a little bit? You got to get yourself going. Like, let's play with more energy. And he's made that adjustment. So, man, I just think Jannik has gotten to a point where mentally it's at a level that's pretty crazy for his age. Then Alcaraz has incredible gifts in his own right. There are probably more flaws because he does lose his tactics a lot. He does have more shot selection issues, which I do lump into the mental category. He's a little bit more streaky with his confidence, and you see more fluctuations in his game probably because of that. But the joy that he brings to the court and the effort that he brings to the court is pretty infectious, and it's built to last. It really is. I think when you enjoy your tennis to that level, it allows you to, first of all, play with a certain freedom that opens up the shot making and the creativity that Alcaraz possesses. And it makes life on tour so much easier and therefore more sustainable, which I think is important and an underrated aspect of certainly, Federer's longevity, because he was probably the most downstream of the three, but obviously, I think anybody who lasts on tour for 35 years at a high level, in some way have figured out a way to enjoy it to the point where they can keep doing it and stay motivated at it. Also, Alcaraz is a very willing learner, very coachable, clearly. Both guys, Sinner and Alcaraz, very, very coachable. You haven't really seen with Holger, you haven't seen a ton of growth in the last 2 years, if we're being honest. And, he was an exceptional player 2 years ago for his age. So it becomes hard to take that next leap, that next step. But we certainly haven't seen it in any super obvious way. He's still got plenty of time and he's still really young. But for all those reasons, I do prefer Alcaraz and Sinner mentally over Holger right now. And I hope that answered the question in some satisfactory way. Next one is from Queen of Toxic. Thoughts on Alcaraz's first match? Seemed to be accelerating on the forehand more than he was in Madrid, but would like to hear your thoughts. Well, as I said in my Tales from the Booth, I was commentating during the Alcaraz match, so I didn't get to watch it. I did watch, and I put it in the draw, his interview with Prakash Armitage and Steve Weissman. Learned a lot from that. Also, I do think it's an interesting theory on his forehand. So he has said that he's not quite comfortable fully going after it right now because he still has that fear in his head and he's still thinking about it. And when you're thinking about the injury at all, if it's in your subconscious or your, even worse, your consciousness, it's going to take away a little bit from what you're able to do. But what I think is an interesting thought is, and it's something that I'll be watching for as I watch Alcaraz throughout this tournament, maybe that's not so bad. Some of the best tennis I've seen Alcaraz play is when he's actually showing some restraint on the forehand. Wasn't that was a big theme in terms of Indian Wells this year, and things he was doing better than what he had been showing in previous months is that it seemed like he was playing the forehand with more RPM and with more mindfulness when it comes to angles and direction. So if he's not clobbering the forehand constantly, could that help him a little bit? Because that's what he said about the JJ Wolf match. He said, look, I think I had a good day on my forehand. I also read YouTube comments for those of you, and I learned so much from reading the comments, guys. You help. I love that process because I like seeing your guys' opinions as well. I saw people remark, some people assess Alcaraz's forehand as being very good in that JJ Wolf match. And he kind of said, yeah, I was putting it closer to the sidelines to make up for the lack of speed and potentially the lack of heaviness. And that's okay. Alcaraz has so much to his game, right? For example, if instead of finishing with his forehand, he needs to hit a more controlled approach shot and finish with his volleys, cool. He's got that, right? He's not a player he's not Andre Rublev, right? If Andre Rublev can't finish with his forehand, screwed. If Carlos Alcaraz can't finish with his forehand, okay, go forward, finish with the volley, fine. That's what options allow you to do. So there's so much to his game where it's not necessarily completely detrimental if his forehand doesn't fully rev up to the max. Although I do think it's on clay, first of all, more important that you're able to hit weight a shot because it takes a little more to hit through the court. And I do think it's a big part of his game. Just hitting, generating pace on the forehand better than, in my opinion, anybody else is a big part of Carlos Alcaraz's game. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes, which way it goes in that particular aspect. So let's see also, what is it going to be like with nerves? Because that was a total breeze. And again, the biggest thing with the injury is all mental. It's all about fear and confidence. Is there fear and is there lack of confidence because of the forearm thing on what is Alcaraz's most important shot? So if he's tested and he's under pressure, that's when those things are going to be at an even higher premium. No doubt about that. All right, let's go to the next one from Suit Darkness. Hi, Gill. Regarding Sinner on clay, do you see his trajectory to be somewhat similar to that of Djokovic's? Still the weakest surface, but overall still be super successful since both are so complete and have no real weaknesses. Also, the more I watch Sinner, the more similarities I see with Djokovic, just more power and less variety, which of both are likely to become even more similar with the current version of Djokovic as Sinner gets older. Well, I agree with that assessment. I've said many times in Sinner's latest run that he keeps reminding me of Djokovic in a multitude of ways. Where do I want to start with this? The only thing is, Sinner does have an extra gear to his weight of shot that Djokovic, even though he, especially for the clay, has really beefed up his ground stroke power, and certainly it's been far above average ground stroke power. I still think Sinner has an extra gear in that department that helps him big time on clay. So if you look at the players who have actually beaten Djokovic on clay when they've performed their best, Dominic Thiem did it twice at Roland Garros. Stan Wawrinka did it once in a huge final. I think Sinner has a little bit more of that Team Wawrinka gear when it comes to his power, and it probably, that part of it probably gives him the ability to potentially have a better relative preference towards clay compared to Djokovic. But I think the best point here is that when you have such an all-around game and such a sound modern baseline game, surface is going to affect you less. Like, that's one of the points that I made in the Tales from the Booth episode is if you're a funky, quirky player, like, I'll go to both extremes. If you're a guy like Tsitsipas and you have a very specific weakness that can be exploited based on surface speed or not exploited based on surface speed, surface matters more. If you are one of the flattest hitters in all of tennis, Daniil Medvedev, surface matters more. But when you play this very sort of textbook, almost basic, I hate the word basic because it sounds a little bit reductive, but it's kind of all, there's no huge holes there. There's nothing strange or funky or quirky about the way Djokovic and Sinner play. Surface matters less with that style. I do want to be a little bit balanced, though. Let me offer some balance, and this has nothing to do with the comment, but I just want to say it. First of all, it's interesting to learn that Sinner was dealing with an illness for 2 whole weeks. He said he went 2 weeks without picking up a racket, not because of the hip, because of illness, he said in his interview, which I had no idea about. But anyway, if you take the hip thing and now this new illness thing, I think the biggest threat for Sinner is the cardio and the fitness. Just if somebody's able to push him and they're playing a long physical match, long rallies, long match, has the fitness been diminished by this by this previous stretch of inactivity, because Jannik was very specific in the interview. Again, it's in the draw if you want to check it out. Jannik was very specific in the interview. He prepared for 9 days for Roland Garros this year, which is not ideal. He played 5 practice sets, or he might have said practice matches, whatever it is, which is not all that much. So they're building the fitness. It's going to get better and better as the tournament goes on. But I think there are 2 big threats to Sinner's play. I'll go to 3. 3 threats. 1, the fitness, which could be diminished. That's the first threat. The second threat is the history around trying to win 2 majors in a row. No man has ever done it in the Open era after winning their first. Sorry, I said that incorrectly the first time. No man has ever won their first slam and followed it up by winning another major. And there's a reason for that. It's really, really hard to do, especially mentally. Again, I think so highly of Sinner's mental game that it doesn't scare me off too much, but it should be said that that's, I think, a second threat. The third threat would obviously be a Carlos Alcaraz or an Alexander Zverev or a Novak Djokovic at their best. You know, just like, that's super obvious, but I don't want to make it sound like it's all up to Sinner, because it's not. Like, he hasn't reached the level of dominance or favorite status at this event, and not even close, where it's just about how he plays. It's also about the field and how they play. And would Zverev handle his nerves if they play in a final? And would Alcaraz be at his best if they played in a semifinal? All that stuff. Next one is from Hardy Har. Hi, Gill. Do you think Sebastian Baez is unfairly reduced as a player to Diego Schwartzman 2.0 due to his height and nationality? I was talking to someone recently who compared Baez unfavorably to Schwartzman, but I pointed out that he's already won more titles at age 23 than Schwartzman won in his entire career, 6-4, though coincidentally both won the biggest title of their careers at the Rio 500. What Schwartzman definitely has over Baez is a big tournament pedigree, with the Masters 1000 final, a Grand Slam semi, and several more Slam quarterfinals. But Baez is trending in the right direction, with his 2 most recent Slams being his best results, 3rd round, and Rome being his best Masters run, 4th round. Plus, Schwartzman's deep runs didn't start happening until around age 25, so Baez isn't exactly lagging behind. I get why it's hard not to compare the two, but as we enter a new era without the big 3 dominance that Schwartzman had to endure, where do you see the cap to Baez's career? Is he the next Schwartzman, like people say, or could he have some David Ferrer upside? Thanks as always for your excellent analysis. Great comment. Yeah, it's a lazy comparison. I mean, it's not even a really great comparison stylistically, because Baez has much more firepower in his game. He serves bigger, although he doesn't serve very big. The biggest difference is the forehand, because Baez has a weapon of a forehand, and Schwartzman did not. His better shot was his backhand, and for Diego, it was much more about return of serve quality, depth, consistency, movement, defense. All of that stuff was just kind of through the roof. But you're right, it took Schwartzman a while. He was kind of a late bloomer in his career. And of course, there was a short-lived prime, I think, because the fitness had to be so good for Diego to have any success. And it was so hard. Like every service game he had to win 3 neutral rallies. It's a very hard way to sustain yourself. I think Baez stylistically is closer to Ferrer, because Ferrer also had an underrated serve. I don't think Baez's serve will ever be as good as Ferrer's. Ferrer had an underrated serve for somebody who is known as someone with no serve, because his serve was often good enough to set up an aggressive +1 forehand. And it's not like he kicked his first serve, Ferrer. Like, Ferrer, first of all, hit his spots and hit like kind of a hybrid slice serve, flat serve usually as his first serve. So Baez is a little bit more partial to the kick serve, which I think he should maybe try to work on and see if he can develop a quicker first serve. But the forehand that Baez possesses is pretty Ferrer-like, because that's where Ferrer looked to do his damage. The backhand was rock solid. Ferrer's backhand was more solid than Baez's, though. Baez's backhand can get a little bit shaky in terms of not only consistency, but sometimes he can put the ball in the kill zone or drop it short off of that two-hander. It's just where Ferrer had that solid, flat backhand that was really difficult to attack. Really, really difficult to attack. So if I had to guess, I would guess that Baez surpasses Schwartzman's career accomplishments, but I would also guess that he comes short of Ferrer. From your friendly GA pilot, hi Gil, maybe not very topical, but I'm wondering what your view of my man Matteo's career is looking like going forward. You've seen / commented on his form in Phoenix. What do you think are the chances he returns into the high part of the rankings? I also talked about his title in Marrakesh on Monday Match Analysis. My biggest concern for Berrettini, look, other than the fact that there's a real possibility that he just won't stay healthy for extended periods of time ever, because his durability issues have been really pervasive. Like, there's been very few instances in his career where he's gone a season without getting hurt. So that part is going to remain an obstacle in all likelihood. But I do think the top 10 is a little bit stronger now than it was in 2018 through 2021. I just think you have a lot of young players who are only getting better in the top 10 right now. And when I look at it, I struggle to find a place for Matteo in there when I look at the top 10. With that said, I don't think that he, I do think that if he stays healthy, the tennis that he was playing in his prime, I don't think it's going to be that hard for him to rekindle something like that. And certainly on grass, you always feel like he has a chance on grass with his assets. You look at his year last year, right? Like just last year, which is seen as a bad Berrettini year because it was. He couldn't stay healthy. He certainly fell in the rankings. But he beat like 4 seeds at slams last year. He played 3 majors, I want to say, because I think he missed Roland Garros if my memory serves. But I think he beat Zverev at Wimbledon. He beat De Minaur at Wimbledon. He beat Hugo Humbert at the U.S. Open, and I think he might have taken out another seed at the Australian Open. So I'm totally going off memory, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering that at all. He also had 2 top 10 wins at the start of last year at United Cup. So you don't even need to go back that far to get examples of Berrettini having a ton of success. And then he comes back this year and wins one of his first tournaments back in Marrakesh. And I know the draw is weak, but it just goes to show you, like, he isn't that far off in terms of level. But then, of course, this clay court season, he has issues staying healthy again, which is so discouraging to see. So my answer for you is I think Matteo, if he stays healthy, will start to play tennis that resembles his best. I just don't know if at this current moment in time, if the results are going to be as good with that level of tennis, because I do think the competition got a little bit stiffer. This one is from Kaya. Gil, you've been high on Jack Draper, but he hasn't had the start that you probably expected. What part of his game does he still need to work on, and do you think he'll figure it out by the end of this season? I don't know if he'll figure it out by the end of this season. Definitely hasn't had the start that I expected in terms of the tennis. He has been, and I still like to hammer this home as a positive. He's been healthy this year. So despite the results not being great, that is something to feel good about. Because I'd much rather get a healthy Jack Draper who's hit some roadblocks when it comes to his winning tennis and beating players. That's way better than Jack Draper got injured again and he's back into rehab and he's not learning. Because right now he's learning, hopefully. and he's figuring out, here's where I need to be better. He's gaining experience, even losing, which in the short term doesn't help a tennis player. Winning is the best medicine. Losing is a poison pill. But, it's way better than him getting hurt is something that I really like to emphasize with Draper. What part of his game does he still need to work on? Finishing with the forehand. That's what was really good in January at the start of the year. It was really obviously encouraging. He makes that final in Adelaide to start the year. And it's looking like he's going to have the breakout season that I, for one, predicted. Another thing, and I know this was a bad loss at Roland Garros, I don't think he's played much clay in his career, at all. I mean, the Brits are arguably worse than the Americans in terms of clay preferences or clay tolerance. So I wasn't expecting much out of the clay court season. I think it's been a little bit odd that there's been so much negative noise around Jack Draper for the clay season, just because, I don't know, were we expecting a lot on clay? He's some of the aspects of his game that are the weakest are certainly not aided by the clay. So his forehand, which lacks penetration at times, yes, it's a high RPM forehand, which can be good on the clay, but if you're not making it go and you're not getting it through the court, then any issues that you have finishing are only going to get worse. And then his backhand, which is a really great weapon, and it does penetrate through the court, it's pretty flat. It's not super flat, but it's pretty flat. And in general, backhands are usually blunted by clay compared to the bigger, larger forehands. So, also the clutchness. Look, he's playing way too many close matches. He's not beating anybody easily. He's really struggling to kind of win under pressure. What's his tiebreak record this year? He's 3-6 in tiebreaks this year. Let's see what his deciding set record is. Deciding sets this year, 5-7, but he's won 3 out of his last 4. So he was he went on a stretch where he lost 5 deciding sets in a row. So he's finding ways to lose. That's usually mental. When you're losing your tie breaks and you're losing all your deciding sets, a lot of the time that's mental. So, all right, a few more. Here's from Raibura. Hello, Gill. Appreciate your RG video after the first day. Glad you enjoyed. I want to ask you about a player playing a tournament before a week of a slam. Here is what Casper said. Quote, "You look at all the players in Paris. What do they do in training? They play matches. So why don't you just come here and play a real match instead of just practice matches?" That's the end of the quote. Many people consider the decision of playing a tournament a week before a major not smart, but especially for RG, many finalists/winners are from the players who played the tournament the week before the slam. 2017 Stan, 2018 Domi, 2021 through 2023 Novak and Casper. How about your thoughts on the thought of a player playing a tournament the week before a slam? Well, first of all, great research. I did not realize that about 2017 Stan or 2018 Domi. I didn't realize that they played the week before. Although for Team in 2018, it's unsurprising, right? He played every week of the calendar back then before he toned it down a little bit. All right, so those of you who have followed the channel for over a year closely know that I have not always been too happy with Casper Ruud's scheduling, particularly when it comes to his Wimbledon preparation, and it's always frustrated me for Casper. I've always felt that it's the wrong call, the way he approaches Wimbledon as a tournament that A, he doesn't seemingly care about, and B, a tournament that he feels like he just can't have success at and essentially throws in the towel by not preparing for it. And I continue to hope that he changes that at some point. But this, the Geneva thing, I will not come anywhere near criticizing him for this. If this works for him, great. And it clearly does work for him. And he makes a somewhat convincing point. Now, is that argument that he makes here going to convince the 90% of slam contenders who don't want to play a tournament the week before? No, it's not going to convince those players, because there's a ton of things that Ruud isn't accounting for that maybe aren't all that important to him, but are still going to be important to most players, which is, first of all, settling in your surroundings. So that could, I mean, normally these are in the same time zone, so that part doesn't matter, but just getting comfortable with where you're staying and what your routine is day to day in terms of the facilities at any given event and where you like to eat, and like all of these kinds of day-to-day life things where it's just your comfort level grows, I think, when you give yourself a little bit of breathing room by getting somewhere early. Obviously, getting used to the conditions. And then the third part is having a low-stress week before what, if you're a contender, is likely to be 2 weeks of the highest stress humanly possible, the most important tournaments of the year, where you are on edge constantly. And even on your off days, you're probably stressed out about your level and your game plan and your physical state and all of that. So I think most players want to go play practice matches where they can forget the anxiety part of it, instead of going to play a tournament the week before where they still kind of feel this anxiousness about like playing a real match. And mentally that's tiresome. To do that for 3 weeks in a row, that's tiresome, or tiring, I should say. So for Ruud, obviously, it's not a problem, and maybe that speaks to how relaxed he feels playing matches, or how confident he feels just quickly adjusting to different conditions or slightly differing conditions. So that's good for Casper, but I'll tell you what, don't expect a lot of players to be convinced by that argument that Ruud lays out. Really interesting to hear his perspective on it, though. Next one from anonymous tennis follower. Hi, Gill. I think we can all agree that Swiatek is the overwhelming favorite going into RG on the women's side. My main concern for her is fatigue. Having won Madrid and Rome back-to-back, I am concerned that fatigue will catch up to her, causing her to underperform at the Slam. Do you think that this is a sensible concern, or is it actually not that big? To put it another way, the last time someone won Madrid, Rome, and the French back-to-back-to-back was Serena Williams in 2013. And it probably hasn't been done for a long time before that, which means that Swiatek is trying to accomplish something historical. Not to mention Serena did it when Madrid and Rome were still using the one-week Masters format. Is the main obstacle to players achieving this historic feat fatigue, or are there bigger ones? I mean, surely the biggest obstacle to achieving that is not being good enough at tennis. Like, let's be honest. To win all of those tournaments, you have to reach a level of dominance that only really Serena and Swiatek have reached in the last 2 decades. But fatigue is certainly, an obstacle anytime you're trying to sustain an extreme level of success, which Swiatek is. But let's look at her match lengths here over the course of this time. So I'm going to sort by clay. Let's go 2024 surface clay. Sort by time. Okay, so she has played 3 long matches. And I'll say long is anything over 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is putting the bar even pretty low. But the match against Beatrice Haddad, which apparently it's Haddad Maya, Beatrice Haddad Maya. I actually have a good amount of Brazilian viewers. Shout out Brazil. So, I think the way she says it is Beatrice Haddad Maya. I'm sure people will let me know if that's right. So that was a 2.5 hour match that they played in Madrid. In Stuttgart, in the semis against Rybakina actually won that match. That was 2 hours, 49 minutes. And then the match of the year, Madrid final against Sabalenka, that was 3 hours, 11 minutes. Other than that, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You have 11 out of the 15 matches she's played have finished in under 2 hours. So that's where winning efficiently is going to come in handy when it comes to this fatigue thing that you're asking me about. And she's likely to do the same thing at the first week of RG. She wins big. She wins quickly. And that's why I truly don't think fatigue is a factor whatsoever. It's really the pressure of a slam that is Swiatek's biggest obstacle and continues to be her biggest obstacle, because we've seen a real dip, if you look at the full picture in the last 2 years or so, of how consistent Iga is at majors and how consistent she is at Masters. Because at Masters, she's dominated. Like, she's had such a high success rate. It's been unreal, and it hasn't been the same thing. It hasn't been quite the same at majors, although it has been at Roland Garros. So it's mainly the pressure of a slam that I'd be concerned about. Maybe Rybakina on a great day is something to be concerned about. Sabalenka, sure, but I think less so. Like, overall, though, my take is I would be really surprised if Iga doesn't win this year. I would. Like, it's funny. I was actually, the Madrid match, which a lot of people felt, oh, this was such a good match that it really shows that Sabalenka has a chance. She had match points. I kind of had a different take on that match. I kind of thought, like, oh my God, if Sabalenka in altitude plays that well and still loses, then how is she going to win on slower clay at sea level, probably playing quite a bit worse than that, if we're being realistic about what is possible based on her average level versus her best level versus her worst level. Most of the time you play somewhere in between your best and your worst. And I thought that was her best. And the fact that she still lost, I was thinking, like, my takeaway was not, look at Sabalenka be so competitive against Iga on clay. My takeaway was, damn, if she doesn't win that match on that clay, it's going to be tough in Paris. But I do think there are reasons why Rybakina has been a slightly tougher matchup for Swiatek than Sabalenka. I think Rybakina serves better and returns better. I'm going to leave it at that. I won't go in more depth, but I think those are the big keys for why Rybakina has had more success. Next one is from Joseph. This is the last one. Hi, Gill. A player from my home country, Justin Enhel. I don't know. You don't say what your country is, so I don't know how to pronounce the name. But it might be Justin Enhel. Recently won his first ITF Tour title, being the first player to do so born in 2007 or later. I'm not trying to push some agenda that he will be the next world number one because of this win. My question is more broad. How well does success at a young age at this level translate to the ATP Tour at a later age? Is this a feel-good win for him, but ultimately meaningless, or does it actually predict future success at the Pro Tour? Yes, this is a great question. You're saying, like, if you're the youngest guy to do something like that, win an ITF, what does it really mean? Well, it usually means you have something special, right? In terms of at least your chances to be a professional tennis player who makes money and stays in the top 100 and qualifies for all the slams. Like, if that's, and realistically, when most players are growing up, that is kind of the realistic goal, and then everything else is gravy, except for the rare few who have crazy ambitions. So it certainly bodes well for that, but it definitely doesn't mean, first of all, it doesn't guarantee that, and it definitely doesn't mean that you're going to continue to be the best player in your age group. Even, I don't know, so he's born in 2007, so how old is he? He's 18, 19, 20. He's 16? Yeah, so I think he's probably 15 or 16, if I did the math right. if you're the best 15 or 16-year-old in your age group, it does not mean you're going to be even a top 10 player in your age group by the time you're 21. So like an example, I think if Felix played Sinner when they were 16, I'm pretty sure Felix would win all 10 times in dominant fashion. Like he'd win 6-1, 6-1 over Sinner every time. Felix, Sinner developed to a place that was, he passed Felix at some point in development. And, you're going to see that. I think the way that you look at it is you have to get to a certain point, whatever that point is. But let's say we're holding the bar at top 50 player, right? You have to get to a certain point. Just because you're closer to that point when you're 16 does not mean you're close to that point. In fact, it's almost guaranteed that Justin Angel is very, very far away from that point. There's still loads of work for him to do, massive amounts of improvements and development ahead of him to actually get to that point. So even though he's leading the pack, leading the charge, even though he's closer to that point than so many other players, does not mean that it's any sort of given that he is going to actually make the gains that are necessary to get to that point. He still needs to make those gains. And that's kind of the way I would look at it. But the fact that he's closer than most people his age obviously bodes well. But I don't know, if you kind of study the history around junior success and how it relates to success on the senior tour, you'll see a lot of different stuff. You'll find that most players who won junior slams ended up having good pro careers at some level. You'll also find that some of the most dominant juniors in the history of junior tennis did not become the most dominant players. Like Gael Monfils was probably one of the best juniors of all time. Nico Pereira, one of the best juniors of all time. And neither of them became the best players on the senior tour of all time, right? So it just certainly not always apples to apples that way. And we saw that with Felix. What Felix was doing at his teenage ages were unbelievable, but now we've seen that there are a few players, like a handful of players, who wound up being better than Felix. So best of luck to your countryman, Justin. And that's my answer to that. And that will wrap up the mailbag, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.